All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what we need to do to set expectations for a customer, as well as not get yourself in trouble when it comes to Wi-Fi access. Keep in mind, with the Minleon permanent lighting system, that control box will create its own Wi-Fi signal that you can interconnect with. You just change the Wi-Fi on your settings on your phone to the WEC Wi-Fi, and then open up the app and you have total control of the system. Now, that's basically the base level of control to the system, and it's completely appropriate. And in fact, in a lot of commercial settings and stuff, that is probably the best option, because getting Wi-Fi up to a rooftop usually requires a third-party internet service, or you may have to drop a spacer cable down to the main level in order for the Wi-Fi to get strong enough signal to that controller. Step one, after pre-qualifying a customer, always try to make a site visit. It's easier to sell the job when you're on site as opposed to over the internet. And aside from that, you're going to catch things that you wouldn't normally see without being there. Where power locations are, how strong the Wi-Fi signal is in certain areas where you might be mounting the control box. They're just the limitations of mounting permanent lighting. You want to know them before you ever get to the job site. The Wi-Fi one's the one that we're going to talk about the most, because it seems to cause the most amount of problems for people, especially contractors that are new to the industry installing. The Minleon permanent lighting system does have the capability of connecting in with somebody's home Wi-Fi or business Wi-Fi. That way you have access to control the system all across the property wherever that Wi-Fi ranges. Without that ability, you just need to be in direct line of sight of the controller to change it. It doesn't matter if you actually have the ability to see the Wi-Fi on your phone. You need to be in line of sight with that controller in order to be able to control it if you don't tie it into the home Wi-Fi. That's one of the reasons why tying it into the home Wi-Fi using their router as an access point tends to be the go-to method. And that's fine. In fact, on all my job sites, I typically tie them in. Wi-Fi seems to be one of the largest problems that we have with new installers. They don't quite understand it, and they don't understand how limiting it can be. So step one is just don't offer the option to interconnect the Wi-Fi with their home Wi-Fi. Now, customers may request it and ask it, and that's fine. We can handle that situation when it arises. But you tend to set yourself up for problems if you offer it, especially if you've never been on site. When I go to an on-site visit, the first thing I'm going to look for is all available power sources. That'll let me know how I'm going to design the system. With the Minleon system, it's incredibly versatile. There's no system out there more versatile than a Minleon permanent lighting system that I've ever seen, found, or heard of. With that being said, you still want to know where your power's at. It's always good to have a design plan for the house before you actually get there. Power sources are one of the limitations, and they're the easiest to find. You just walk around, look, and find all available power sources. Once you have all the available power sources, it'll help you design the system overall. Now, Minleon's incredibly versatile, so it doesn't matter whether you put power in the middle of the lights, at the end of the lights, at the beginning of the lights. You can put it anywhere, so it's not usually that big of a limitation. But there have been times where there's not a power source in a certain area, especially on like commercial properties I'll find, where there's not a power source for 200 feet, and that can pose a problem. So definitely look for power sources as your first goal when you get to a site. The second thing is Wi-Fi strength. In your head, you can imagine, this is the way I'm going to lay it out. I want my controller over here, so that way everything flows from left to right, or vice versa, everything flows from right to left. So if you're doing a proper installation, and they are paying you to do this, right? So you're a professional, you want everything flowing in the right direction if at all possible. That means the controller needs to be on one of the sides in order for that to occur. When setting up those controllers, you're going to first need to find out if there's Wi-Fi signal in that area or not. Now, again, you can connect directly to the controller, and that's the preferred method to lower the amount of service calls, amount of issues that can possibly happen, and ease of installation. But in case the customer requests, if you're going to be able to tie it in, pull up your phone or iPad, go to the settings menu, and check the Wi-Fi strengths in that area. Find out what the Wi-Fi is that they use in their house typically, and see what the strength is in your possible locations that you can mount the controller. If you have good strength in one area, then you know that it's probably not going to be much of a problem to interconnect. There are different things that you will need to look into though. One of the other issues that you can run into is that you'll find the strength is good there, but there's all of a sudden 3 different Wi-Fis. And they're all called the same thing. They're called Johnson's _ 5G, Johnson's _ 3.2, Johnson's _ EXT, whatever the case is. This means that a professional did not install their system, okay? Network systems, oftentimes homeowners will go on YouTube or Amazon and they'll find videos and they'll say, oh, I can do this myself. But the reality is if a professional did this, you wouldn't see that. And you see all these bands here and they're all called the same thing. And then the problem is you need to connect into one. Well, the controller can't differentiate between all 4 of those Johnsons. You don't know which one it's going to try to connect in with. And then if, let's say, power gets cut and let's say you happen to connect to the correct Wi-Fi band, but then power is cut and then it turns back on. What happens when your controller tries to connect into the wrong one when the power is restored? Let's hope that they even have the same password on those, which usually they don't. But if it did have the same password, sure, it'll probably connect into one of the other bands or whatever. But now you have no control over it because you're set on the normal 5G version or whatever, and it decided to connect to Johnson's_EXT. Okay, so these are problems that you can see at the job site. When you go there, you're going to be able to look at all of those parameters and understand that that's going to be a problem. Those are issues that you want to avoid. You don't want to be offering that you're going to tie it in with their Wi-Fi if they're not willing to set it up for you to tie it into their Wi-Fi easily. With that being said, if you know you have good signal and you know you have a good Wi-Fi name that's not using any weird underscores and stuff like that, I still wouldn't offer the option to the customer, but if they ask for it, you can certainly provide that. You shouldn't run into any issues. It should be just an easy connection. It becomes a bigger problem when the customer requests it, and then you look at it and say, this isn't something that I'm going to be able to do easily. You already inspected it, so you know that this isn't going to be an easy process. You know that there's 3 bands or there's only 2 bars of internet service outside their house. So let's talk about the first issue. If you have a low strength signal from your Wi-Fi to wherever you're mounting the controller, you either have to move the controller or you have to boost the signal. There's no other options. I use a booster. It's called a D-Link booster. I recommend it currently right now. The one that I use is a DP-1530. Okay, I can buy it off of Amazon. It costs me like 25 bucks. I keep like 2 of them on the truck at all times. There's a reason for it because I have no idea if I'm going to need that or not, but I'm going to bring it with me just in case I need to boost it, in case the customer says they want that option. Then you have to set up your mesh extender. I want to be very clear. Mesh extenders are better than typical extenders. A typical extender, when you think about it, let's say you're on one cell tower, okay, and you move to a second cell tower, let's say you're on the phone. They have a way of seamlessly transitioning from one tower to the next without cutting you off the phone call. Most of these low-grade extenders, they will cut you off and then they'll reconnect to the new extender, okay? That's not the best way. You definitely want a mesh extender where it will seamlessly transfer from your router to the extender and you don't even know the difference. And to do that, you need to set it up appropriately too. So when you set up the extender, make sure you give it the same name as the Wi-Fi that you're connected into from the home, and make sure you give it the same password. That way, when the controller decides to connect, with either the extender, the home Wi-Fi, whatever the case is, whatever it's connecting into, it will always reconnect or it will always seamlessly transition between the 2 of them. And like I said, if there's power outage or whatever, it'll interconnect with one of the 2, but it doesn't really matter because it's basically the same system. You've just extended this and boosted that signal. And so you're basically spreading it out from here, and it's right here, it goes here, it's shrinking, now it's boosted. And that's essentially what you're doing, okay? And that's why I recommend only mesh extenders. And the one that I use, like I said, DAP-1530, and that's a D-Link. But you can find whatever one works for you, okay? There's no right answer here, that's just what I use. All right, now let's talk about if you have multiple Wi-Fis. If you have multiple Wi-Fis all with the same name, you know that that's going to be a problem to connect. That's a problem that I'm not willing to solve myself. I'm not going to learn how to go into their router and change their name so that way it's completely different. I'm going to leave that on them. If they want that tied in, then they're going to have to change their name. And that's something that when you are at the house prior to install, if you're at the house taking a look at it, and they've decided to sign up with the job, if you want to offer that option, then I would just say, so if you wanted to interconnect with your house, we do have that possibility, but I noticed that you have 3 different bands. Now you may have to contact your service provider of your internet service and ask them how you can change the name of one of those bands. They may send somebody out for free to do it. They may walk you over the phone, but the reality is don't put that on your plate. That's a big time sink for you to try to fix all of that. Every router is different. Every service provider is different on changing the name. But point is, if you feel like you need to offer that option, try to do it ahead of time. If you're not even certain that you want to offer that option, you can just not mention anything. That's the route I'm going to go. Don't mention anything. If at the end of the service and they decide that they want the interconnect with the Wi-Fi, you can say, certainly, we can do that. There is a charge of X amount, we'll call it $200, to interconnect it with your home Wi-Fi. So as long as you give them the parameters, if they were to mention it, you can give them the parameters of, this is your home Wi-Fi. This is the one that you're going to be on all the time. I do have good signal out to the Wi-Fi box, but at the same time, it has the same name as the other 2 bands at your house. I need you to change that completely. Instead of Johnson's_5G, I need you to change it to something like Johnson's Home, right? No spaces, no weird symbols or something like that. Just something that they'll always know is their home Wi-Fi. And then anything that connects there, unfortunately, they're gonna have to reconnect to on their phone and whatnot. But at the same time, that's what is gonna have to happen to make that occur. And you could tell them, like, yes, we can go ahead and do that. there is a charge, or maybe you don't charge them if you feel like it's going to be easy enough if they set up that parameter, but that's up to you. So to recap, here are the ways to set expectations and limit your service calls. First, always do a pre-site visit. Check power supplies and check Wi-Fi. 2, always make sure that you plan everything out as much as can be, including your design, what power locations you're going to use, and where you're mounting the controller prior to ever installing the job. Do not offer services that could cause you problems without you checking things first. This should be done in pre-site visits. And 3, set the customer's expectations. If they request something that wasn't originally agreed upon in the proposal, then let them know what would be required in order to provide that service or option. Just following these 3 basic rules will save yourself and your company a lot of aggravation and losses in the future.